Hello, everybody, and welcome to Grid Iron Astrology, episode 6, week 6 of the NFL 2025. It's Spicy Gemini Chess here with me, Dorje Kirsten, and we're here to present to you the game of the week. And this week, we're going to go with the Browns versus the Steelers. Jess, I'm excited for this game. So I'm excited for it because I see these as two gritty teams, two teams that are like trench warfare teams going at each other. The Iron Curtain of the Steelers and the Bulldogs of the Browns. So I
Truly.
think it's going to be a good fight. What do you think about this game? Like what gets you excited about it?
Um, there are a couple of things that get me excited. I want to keep an eye on the Browns across the next 2 or 3 years. I don't think that they're currently in a winning window, but I do think that there are some things coming down the line that are especially interesting to me in terms of their overall functionality. So that's something that I am intrigued by with them. And then with the Steelers, who's the starting quarterback?
Oh, it's this guy who likes to do weird things like ayahuasca and dark retreat. And he's got strange medical ideas, which are in
Yes.
vogue with a very small part of the population. Yeah, what's his name again? I forget. Like I remember his things, but I forget his name. Is it?
I think he goes by Aaron
Oh,
Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers. Yes, yeah, yeah. It says Hall of Fame quarterback for sure. Hall of Fame quarterback. So we're gonna do it a little differently this week. We're gonna
Yes.
go first the chart of each team, and then with the transits during the game to see what that says, and then we'll do the event chart. So it's a little bit of a switch up. We're kind of like moving on from being kind of like exploring more strictly the Frawley method, which just, kind of mastered enough to say doesn't work, which I've
Yep.
heard from other people, like, so it's kind of like, okay, in the astrology chart, if you're going to say like something's going to affect a client, you want to hear it like 3 or 4 times in the chart.
Yes.
And so now I've heard kind of 3 or 4 times that Frawley's method might not be as good as he proposes it is. Again, Mr. Frawley, nothing personal. If you want to come on to our show and talk to us about it, you're always welcome. I'd probably side with you. I'm empathetic and a Libra, so I'd probably totally take your side, Mr. Frawley. But so feel it's a warm place for you. It's a warm place. But we're gonna let his technique kind of go a little bit because I mean, just did it pan out? Like I don't think
Not
it hit
once.
one game right.
Not once, not at all.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Truly.
tragic, tragic. Yeah. So first, let's talk about the Browns. I think we have the Browns game chart up here.
Yes. So
Um,
the inner wheel is the Browns, the outer is this game that is on October 12th.
okay, and so first, I'd like to give a little background with the Browns right now. So the current quarterback is Dylan Gabriel, who is
Yes.
a rookie. He was a Heisman contender last year, led the Ducks to, I think, like, what was it, number two?
Yep.
He lost to Ohio. And so then he's considered to be, he was a really good college quarterback, but he was very old. He was one of the oldest college quarterbacks there was, had the most passing yards in college football history. So he just got elevated. Last week was his first week. They played in London, and he had a fairly good game as a ball manager. 190 yards, which isn't too much. Went 19 for 33, but no interceptions in his first NFL game after traveling from Cleveland to London, which is not easy on the body, and had 2 interceptions. So he was going up against the Vikings, which are a pretty solid defense. They rank number 6 right now in the league. So he held up pretty good against a solid defense. And the Steelers, they're known to be a good defense. They're the Iron Curtain, but they have been less than stellar this year, ranking number 26th in the NFL currently, allowing an outstanding 358 total yards a game. So
Wow.
I think one of the questions, like as I'm looking at the Browns chart, is do we get Dylan Gabriel as a quarterback who's going to start leading them? There's a controversy in the quarterback room. There's a Shadar Sanders who's like, NFL royalty, but nobody wants to start him. The Browns don't want to start him. He could barely get drafted. I think what he got taken in the fifth round or the late third, I forget, but it was kind of embarrassing. And then also part of that controversy, because Joe Flacco was just traded to the Bengals, so there's only two quarterbacks currently in the quarterback position. I forget, a Zappos or something who's on the practice squad, has not yet been elevated. But they're also talking about Deshaun Watson coming back next week. So maybe that's why they got rid of Flacco. But Deshaun Watson, he had an ACL tear in the seventh game last season, in the seventh game. And God, I hope not, Jess. Nobody likes Deshaun Watson. He's
No,
such an awful man.
yeah, no, he needs to be
Yeah.
gone for good, for good.
Yeah. So in the Browns charts, you see any of this
Well,
in
what's
the transit?
interesting to me, based on what you've just mentioned, we're talking about the musical chairs of quarterbacks, and we actually do see that with the Sun conjoining Uranus. For me, that's a lot of people with regards to how the unit that is the Browns are generally functioning. I believe, and this number might be slightly off, but since 1999, they've had 41 starting quarterbacks.
Wow.
There's like an absurd number where it's just like, okay, like this is maybe a problem. I do see that there is just inherently a lot of upheaval. This is the noon chart, so that's one of the downsides. We can't see the houses that are associated with these planets, specifically the Sun and Venus. That may give us more context with regards to where the shuffling is happening. But instability is pretty profound in terms of how the Browns function. There's also an interesting dynamic of what I would label as like power struggles with Mars conjoining Pluto very closely within about a degree here. And so it just feels like I don't know what the management looks like. I don't know what the ownership looks like, but it just feels like somebody's not on the same page as everyone else. And that seems to have pretty substantial impacts on how the team is functioning. Again, I don't know that much about the Browns. I started tracking them a little bit last season just because I'm really excited about this Jupiter transit that's about to come up. Curious, interested, invested. Basically, also
Oh,
yeah,
very
the
cool.
Uranus transit as well. That's
Yep.
the longer term. I think that they might have a little bit of a change of a tempo, probably next 3 to 5 years, especially. But anyway, that's what's outstanding to me. What do you see?
I'm first of all, my brain does that thing where I'm like, okay, 1944. So that's, if I'm right, 81 years. So the sun would progress 81 degrees.
Mhm.
And so 17 plus 30 is 47. Add another 30, that's 77. And then add another four. And then you get the progress sun at what, the 3 or 4 degrees Virgo. 3 or 4 degrees Virgo. So, yeah, does that tell us anything? No, not really. I mean, what do you think about that? Like the progressed sun would be having just moved into the first house. So, is that a sign for a team that's getting ready to find its identity?
I would love that for them, but the transiting south node has to make its pass first.
Right. That's what's holding it back. That's what's holding it back. I like that. I like that. And then last year, and even somewhat this year, then you had Saturn opposing that first house too.
Yes.
So Saturn in the seventh is always going to create difficulties, whether it's like whether you marry someone with Saturn in your seventh, totally reliable, going to be completely solid there. My apologies if I offend anybody who has a partner with Saturn in their seventh in their synastry chart, but that Saturn, it's known for being dominating, and so it means that the other party is dominating, and I think we had that, which is also interesting because Deshaun Watson's whole thing is that he's a very bad man with his hands in massage parlors. And so that's a Saturn in the seventh thing, coming out, facing the truth, facing the law, and having to deal with that conscientiously. I mean, is that
Um,
just part of also they have Jupiter and Mars conjunct Pluto in the 12th house that they would have a quarterback who would, get himself in trouble not once, not twice, not 32 times, not but 37 or 41 times?
My question is, when did this story break? Was it within the past 2.5 years? Because that could be part of their Saturn square story. Their natal Saturn is in the sign of Gemini, and we've had Saturn in Pisces since 2023, or has it been far beyond that?
Well, it did break when he was with the Texans.
Okay.
The
So,
Texans were
yeah.
like, we can't do this. We can't do this.
And the Browns are like, come
And
on.
and then Browns are like, yeah, we can do it. Because look at that, Mars conjunct Pluto. They're like, yeah,
Right,
we can do this. You
right.
know, we're totally ready to. But that was all within the last year and a half. You are right. That
Okay.
was within the last year and a half.
Whew, what a time. What a time.
What happened in the last year, I'd say that covers when he had his ACL tear. They
Okay.
said they were going to pay him 43 million a year. They liked him that much. He came and played 7 games. He was okay. He wasn't going to take them to the Super Bowl, but then he tore his ACL and didn't have to anymore. And like everybody else could be blamed for why the team didn't succeed. and he could collect 43 million. It's an amazing sport.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, what a nightmare, actually.
Yeah,
The other story I see is Pluto is hovering around the South Node. Obviously, it hasn't been in the sign of Capricorn for a little bit, but that's a little bit of the background messiness, perhaps.
right.
Go ahead.
The other part of this, and I'm just curious what you think, the Browns are actually one of the best defenses in the NFL right now.
Yes. Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah. Is that showing up in the chart? Do you see it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Georgie, do you see anything? I don't
Well,
see anything that's like outstanding other than this force, I guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's see. So for defense, I look at what's going on with Saturn at 27 degrees. Oh, there we go. So we do have a Saturn square Saturn, which you just mentioned. But that could be tightening that principle of the defense, right?
Sure.
Okay, and this goes into last week. Last week, I predicted that the Seahawks would win. You predicted that the Bucks would win. I will forgive you one day, probably because they did win. I'd forgive you quicker if the Seahawks had won, but they didn't. So I'm working through it on my heart. Um, but the remarkable thing of the chart when we looked at that last week was that Moon and Saturn were conjunct
Yeah.
in the fourth house. And I thought that meant it would be a defensive game. It wasn't. Both teams scored over 30 points, so it was a very high scoring game. But what it did mean is that, like the fourth house, the home field advantage, the crowd, because the moon is the people in astrology, had that experience of emotional depression. And one of the things going on with Seattle is they have lost 7 of their last 9 home games. So they have a winning record every season, but they're losing most of their home games.
That is so odd.
Yeah, and so that's that moon conjunct Saturn. We were all disappointed. We all cried. Anyways, that Saturn is that oppressive force, I think, and that is highly activated right now by transit,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That would make sense.
especially over the last 5, 6 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anywhere else? Does that show up anywhere else? Like,
The only thing that's kind of activating them, but this is, I mean, shorter term because Mars moves at a quicker clip here.
yep.
Mars is roughly activating their moon. We know their moon is in the sign of Scorpio. We don't know the degree because, again, we're using the noon chart. Take it for what you will. That could be a component here, but I see Mars, and perhaps you think of this similarly. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is more the offense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it can be either one. Like, I do think that's the cornerback play. Like, the Mars can be in the cornerbacks. We're going to have a special guest on in a couple of weeks, Cesar, who is absolutely amazing at associating the planets with the different players and positions. We'll dive into that a little bit more when that comes
So
along.
excited.
But I do think of, Mars as being the quarterbacks, the running backs. Well, maybe Mercury's more the cornerbacks because the cornerbacks are more like thieves. Their job is to go up and get that ball before the receiver gets the ball. But Mars definitely the cornerbacks. I think that there is like a lot to be said for Jupiter being in their 11th house with their North Node. So they're
Mhm.
saying this is a rebuilding. They're going to find their identity. They're going to grow from that. And I really do hope that it's Dylan Gabriel or even maybe Shadar Sanders. Who knows what he plays like? We haven't seen it yet. And that this is a building year for them where they discover the hope of who they can be. And then, like you said, next year that really grows with Jupiter conjuncting their Pluto, their Mars, and their Jupiter return. So that's a Jupiter return here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm genuinely excited to see how that shakes out because that's also just nice to measure how astrology is mapping onto the event charts of the teams themselves, if it really does reflect with these major transits like Jupiter
Yeah,
conjoining.
absolutely, absolutely. So the Steelers have an interesting narrative. They have been plagued by injuries. Jalen Ramsey, their star quarterback, is out. A wide receiver Calvin Austin is out. Jalen Warren was out last week, who's their just absolutely great stud running back. Head coach Mike Tomlin, he mentioned that he felt like this could be a difficult game because he was really lavishing praise on Dylan Gabriel for having a beyond his years capacity or beyond his experience in the NFL capacity for in-game decisions, which is that he was like he's processing better than we usually see out of almost any rookie quarterbacks. Where do you throw the ball? Where do you not throw the ball? When do you release? When do you not release? So there is this rumor that it's a trap game. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. This is my rational mind, as I've mentioned to you personally, but the audience doesn't know. My rational mind says something very different from what the astrology says. And so I am just kind of in a labyrinth in my mind and in my heart, trying to figure out how to navigate this.
Yeah. So we've got the South Node on Jupiter.
Yeah,
To
like,
me, that's pretty nasty. Because the
yeah,
South Node, what does it do? Traditionally, in astrology, that means that they're facing some old karma.
yeah.
Maybe maybe in a past life, the Steelers were or what would you say? Maybe in the past life, the Steelers were a farmer and they were an aquatic farmer. They were in China
Yep,
and they were like
absolutely.
doing fish farming together and rice paddy farming and very spiritual. And so they're going to fall into that kind of like spiritual nature rather than the growth nature of the North Node and Saturn conjunct, which is like really going with the flow and being a strong defense. And that's one of the things is the Steelers are 26th in defense this year. So if Dylan Gabriel was good against a good defense, what's he going to be like against a bad defense? And I think that's one of the big questions of this game.
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
What's standing out to me, and I'm just registering this now, is Uranus is having this Chiron conjunction, and the South Node is conjoining Jupiter in the Steelers chart. Jupiter is abundance, it's good luck, it's what's working for them. Jupiter is not especially happy to be in the sign of Virgo, but Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is in the sign of Leo. Follow me here. Their current quarterback is this ego, is a pretty big ego. And I'm curious if that is sort of mapping onto what needs to be dealt with. And I think that there's the possibility that behind the scenes there might be some internal conflict between some big egos. And this could be coaches, this could be significant players having certain ideas about how things should be running. And that's causing a little bit of pushback. And it could maybe lead to some internal collapsing or strife.
I mean, not that that's what caused Aaron Rodgers to leave Green Bay and what caused him to leave. Not like
Yes.
he doesn't have a pattern doing this.
And we see it again.
And we see it again. Yeah. And I have read an article that was talking about the disagreements between Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin about how the team should be run. And, I mean,
Interesting. Not surprising, but
but they're 4-1.
yeah, true. That's a
They
good
are
point.
4-1. Anyways, so I was kind of going off on a tangent, an evolutionary tangent, but really in traditional astrology, the South Node decreases whatever it's touching, and here it's touching Jupiter, which is the ability to score a lot of points.
Yeah.
And so you have that South Node conjunct Jupiter while they're going up a team that's one of the number one teams in the league.
Yeah.
And that looks difficult. So the Steelers are favored by 5.5 points by Vegas, which is over a field goal. That's pretty generous.
Yeah.
Vegas likes that the Steelers are 4-1. They don't like that the Browns are 1-4. But
That's
maybe they're misreading it. Maybe it's not just a trap game. Maybe there's other things going on. Yeah, should we go to the game chart? Or
absolutely.
yeah, actually, you know what? Do you have Aaron Rodgers' chart?
Oh, absolutely. We have
That
him
would
right
be
here.
amazing to see.
Nice little picture of him in his Steelers regalia.
Oh,
As
look
it,
at that. Yeah, he looks very comfortable and happy.
we do have an AA rated chart for Aaron Rodgers. So the inner wheel is his chart. He is a 5-degree Taurus ascendant, to no one's surprise.
Hmm.
And then the outer wheel is this game, just to see what's going on there.
Because he's a heathen, right? That's why you say that.
Of course.
Or do you mean because he's stubborn?
Maybe a little bit of both.
Maybe a little bit of both. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, he hasn't looked that good this year. So, why? Why is he not looking good? What's going on?
Well, actually, now that we're looking at it, he does in fact have Pluto in his 10th house whole sign. So that is changes related to career, outward persona, the ways in which he's showing up. His midheaven is in the ninth house whole sign, Capricorn. So that may have been around the time, this was a while back now, but that may have been around the time where his unique and eccentric perspectives started coming to the fore, unless that's been out for decades and decades, which I don't think has necessarily been the case. For me, we have the South Node currently in Virgo. It was most recently in the sign of Libra. And again, the South Node is decreasing. Mars is vitality. It's related with the prowess that we have if we are playing sports. That ship has sailed, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I can't be that high and mighty in this perspective because he's winning games.
Yeah.
But for me, that South Node conjunction, which would have been, I don't know, a little under a year ago at this point, he maybe should have just retired.
Right.
And
So he tore his ACL and had to sit out for a year and then
yes.
came back last year and was kind of okay. And this year seems kind of okay.
He was getting South Node eclipses in his sixth house. The sixth house is physical
Mm.
health in general. That's more of a modern perspective, traditional perspectives, ill health, and other things beyond the scope of health and wellness. South Node again decreasing, so it does make sense that he had a major injury in that regard.
Decrease of his vitality, which is like, it's a little bit warning as you age. Like when you get those South Node or malefic transits in the sixth, pay attention, be good to your body. Don't put yourself on a field where 280-pound men who can bench press 375 pounds are coming at you as fast as they can and throwing you to the ground. Like as an astrologer, if one of my clients is having a heavy sixth house transit, I'm like, hey, be cool and be mellow right now. Don't put yourself in harm's way. And the football field is harm's way. So
Absolutely.
that's interesting. That's a very kind of full on practical way to read the motion of the nose as chronocators.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's quite brilliant, Jess, actually. Like that's quite brilliant. Do you do that for your clients?
In terms of measuring how they're impacting on like a time to time basis, month to month,
Yeah,
year.
yeah. How the nodes are kind of like moving the story along for them.
I do my best to. I find it a little bit more easy to actualize with public figures just because we see them on the stage before us and
Yeah,
we can kind of map on like, oh, and there's the health thing. Like I will play around with like what outstanding is happening in this realm of their life with the South Node, for example. So South Node in the fifth house, not necessarily deep, intense relationships. That's normally the seventh house, but this could be romantic relationships, things like that coming to the fore. It could also be like a disproportionate expression of the creative will coming to the foreground. Not that that is unusual, as we've already covered, but those are the sorts of topics I would be mindful of and just keep an eye out on with regards to headlines. And then I map it onto the chart and see if there's anything else that's active.
absolutely. So he did get married recently,
Oh,
and
really?
he kept it secret, and nobody knows who he got married to, which is
We
kind
still
of
don't know,
the
right?
Oh, is that a Scorpio seventh house? Oh my gosh. Yes, it is. Yes,
Like
it
very much
is.
so.
Yeah.
The other thing that I notice, he has so many Sagittarius placements, it's kind of wild. What I think is pretty outstanding is he just entered his Uranus opposition, which is a major midlife transit. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, yeah, it changes who you are and what you're doing. And so that could be very good for you. I was like working on being a software engineer. I owned a tea company, and now
Ooh,
I'm an astrologer. Uranus opposition hits, it kind of like powers through. It changes almost everything about your life. And
absolutely.
so this could be his final season.
Yeah.
Because that Uranus is not going to hit that opposition until after the season's over, but it will this summer.
Yeah. I wonder if he's trying to go out on a high note just to kind of move like Tom Brady did toward the end of his career, which was like surprisingly effective. I don't remember his last season, but I know he had a late career Super Bowl win, right?
Yes, like Russell Wilson, who has had a late career complete and total collapse.
Mm.
I
Huh.
would be surprised if that wasn't what happened to Aaron Rodgers. It
Yeah.
just seems like every year he's like, oh, this is the great Aaron Rodgers. And then every year it's a little less like that. But still, there's this collapse during the playoffs.
Yeah.
And one of the things about the Steelers is they always make the playoffs. I think that's a credit to Mike Tomlin. That might also be something that you see in their chart. But there is this kind of like quality for Aaron Rodgers of his body is not very sustainable at this point,
Mm.
and it breaks down as the season goes on. And
Absolutely.
I know that Tom Brady was very strict with his diet. He was like a highly refined vegan diet that was also extremely well crafted in terms of nutritional targeting,
Mhm.
which I think comes if you have a lot of money and you're a vegan. Most vegans, it's a little bit harder to pull off because you really have to like be able to dedicate a lot of your day to figuring that out or have pay someone to
Yeah.
figure that out for you, which is probably what Tom Brady did. But I do believe that that gave him some of his limberness and ability to continue playing well into the end of his season. I remember reading back in like 2014 or 2012, a nutritionalist talking about Russell Wilson's diet and how he was off on certain uh, protein to carb ratios. And that nutritionalist was like, his body's going to break down in 8 years and he's not going to be able to do this sport anymore.
Mhm.
And kind of watched it. So to me, it's amazing because you look at these players and you get ones like Tom Brady who are just very hyper intelligent and attuned to how the body works, and they hit it right. I mean, they're all attuned to how the body works because they're highest level professional athletes in this country culturally in terms of the skill set of being hit, getting hit, and performing various athletic maneuvers.
Mhm.
I believe it's like one of the peaks of performance, sports performance in
Absolutely.
terms of the versatility, which is why you get football players who train in ballet and train in Aikido and train in baseball and train in basketball. And they do all of that in order to bring it together onto the field and be able to jump 5 feet in the air, catch a ball with one hand, land with their toes touching the sideline, and then get hit by a 280-pound man. I mean, it's like, it's quite something.
Yes.
So they're all like really hyper articulated, but I think it's really hard to sustain a body past 40, which is what Aaron Rodgers was trying to do here. And I think that comes up into the game chart. So would you mind?
This is the game chart. This is
Yes.
the Placidus house system. We also have the whole sign house system for you, but I
Thank you.
wanted to start here if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, looking at this chart, ascendant ruler is associated with the away team. In this case, it would be the Browns. It's exalted.
Hmm.
It's angular. It
Mhm.
is not especially close to the descendant, obviously, because Placidus house system. But that's significant. That looks pretty good for the Browns. That immediately for me is like red flag, yellow flag, like, woo. I try not to know too much about how the teams are doing. I try to stay somewhat removed to the best of my ability. And then I saw how they were doing compared to one another. And I'm like, well, rationally, it has to be the Steelers, but out the gate, what I see here is support for the Browns functionally. So the next point, the descendant would be associated with the home team being the Steelers. Mercury is the ruler of the descendant, Mercury in the sign of Scorpio specifically. Now, it is conjoining and applying to a conjunction specifically with Mars. Mars is at home in the sign of Scorpio. It functions very well. However, I was getting confused here, and this is part of what I wanted to talk with you about. I don't see this as a positive aspect in a general sense, but we're talking about sports. And so having Mars as part of this conversation for the ruler of the descendant, would this not empower the Steelers to be more athletically optimally functioning, so to speak?
Aggressive, engaged. It may be. I mean, you've also got that trine to the moon.
Yeah.
The applying trine to the moon there is, really interesting. It's like, okay, there's some kind of fluid motion involved, some kind of cohesive fluidness. But to me, it's hard to read
Yeah.
because that again brings up this kind of like, are there power struggles going on in the Steelers that
True.
they're able to hide because of the coach and the talent? Now, I read some really interesting things today. Gosh, let's see if I can find the notes on it really quickly. Just a fantastic 26 out of 32 times that the Steelers have come back from a bye week, they have won. And they had a bye week last week.
Oh,
They have won. They win 80% of the times they play a first year quarterback.
well,
So those are some causes for confidence, but is it overconfidence? Is there like a bitterness? Because I agree with you, like this testimony of Jupiter and the moon. So you got the moon and its rulership and Jupiter and its exaltation together in Cancer, representing the Browns. If we go to the whole sign, like that's the more of the way I'm used to reading the chart. And then I'm gonna see that Jupiter and the moon. And what's really fascinating to me is that the Jupiter moon there is really strong, in my opinion, even though it's the eighth house. And by whole sign, the Mercury and Mars move into the 12th house. And so then that is this kind of like backroom arguing, hidden enemies, people just dropping the ball because they're tired of getting yelled at by Aaron Rodgers. And I do think this has happened before on other teams. Okay, like, you're going to talk to me like that. I'm just going to not quite catch that, and I'm still going to make my million, but you're not going to get your glory days on the way out of town, partner. Anyways, that's a lot of conspiracy thinking. But that is what I see within the context of the chart is this like quality there. On the other hand, the 10th is ruled by Venus. Venus is in the very late degrees, opposed by Saturn, and I tend to give the 10th to the visiting team and the 4th to the home team. But the home team has Chiron and Neptune. And so I think that washes itself out. The moon's last application within the sign, it did not have a previous application unless we're counting the new planets. The last application is, according to Bonatti, the home team. And then the next application is the visiting team. Is the visiting team, and that would be the eighth house. I'm sorry, the last application is the visiting team.
Okay.
So that would be Neptune, square to Neptune.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a square to Neptune. So we'd have to use non-traditional planets to get to that. Otherwise, we'd call it a void of course. But to me, that makes sense because the Browns were playing in London, foggy London. I doubt it was foggy, but the NFL's trying to initiate the NFL in Europe, and they're using these London games to try to build up the hype and the steam. And so then there's like, yeah, that makes sense. Doesn't really show one thing or another. Next application is to that Mercury. And it's really an interesting question. Like traditionally, you would say that because Mercury is making an application to its own ruler,
Mhm.
it is not harmed by the ruler, but it is helped by the ruler.
Fair.
So would that be Aaron Rodgers snapping into form and being able to cut up the backfield of the Browns? Would that be Jalen Warren returning from injury? Like he's been out for 2 weeks, fully recharged and just crushing it and breaking apart what has been otherwise a vaunted Browns line? I don't know. I'm tending to go with Jupiter and the moon, and the Browns definitely, at the very least, beat the spread.
I love that. Another factor that I want to share, and this is like the really like quick and dirty way that I've read charts, including for the Jaguars and the Chiefs last week. I look at above the horizon and below the horizon. Above the horizon is the away team, below is the home team. We have the luminary of sect above the horizon. We have both of the benefic planets above the
Oh,
horizon
wow.
as well.
Yeah.
We also have Mars, which is, not great, but good for sports. We also have Mercury. And so for me, just very quickly, that is another supportive note specifically for the Browns.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So where did you come up with that?
I don't
That
know.
it makes t complete sense. But did you just rise in your head one day, or did you read it somewhere?
Just playing, just
Yeah,
trying.
yeah. And then it tends to work.
I mean, yes, it's worked the past couple of weeks. I did not really register it until we recorded it. I've done it before, but I haven't really thought about it critically or recently until we were looking at the Bucks game last week. And then I was playing with it casually. I like for the Chiefs Jaguars game, I looked at the chart for 5 minutes because if I overthink, then no, like it's not a
Yep.
good
Yep.
situation. But I did that approach and I'm like, oh, it's very much the Jaguars. And that is actually one chart that I wish I brought with us today because it may actually be a point in favor for Frawley and his method. Because
Well,
he also would have said the Jaguars would have won. But anyway,
cool. That is very, very cool. And I love it because when I look at an astrology chart, like we're talking and I'm like, okay, well, Jupiter and the moon are in Cancer, and that's really good. And then I start going, well, the moon's doing this, and that's doing this, and that's doing this.
yeah,
And you can really lose that fresh moment of insight. It does work if you start seeing repeating patterns, but
yeah.
in this chart, I don't quite see the repeating patterns that I'd want to see.
I have a question for you. This sun is applying to a square with Jupiter and also Chiron, obviously not a
Mm,
planet,
yeah.
but there's a square here as well. So that would be a T square if we're using flexible definitions of what a
Mhm.
T square can be. Do you have any thoughts about this
In terms of the game,
in terms of how that may impact the Browns?
impact the Browns. Oh,
The
I
sun.
see. Okay, yes, yes, I got it. Because Jupiter is representing the Browns, and how does that impact the Browns? To me, that that Chiron, I always am going to want to say it's a wound, it's an injury. I mean, you could even
Okay.
get as weird as an ankle injury because Chiron was shot in the ankle with the Gorgon poisoned arrow by Hercules, who was like, "Hey, I'm just going to shoot, at these beautiful horses over here." And anyways, Hercules was not a good guy. Anyways, but that Jupiter square Sun, I think it's a high, I think they put up a lot of points. And
Interesting.
I,
I
I
like
think
that.
that's, they're coming from a place of a wound.
Yeah.
They're coming from a place of trying to establish her identity.
Is this a big rivalry set or not really?
I don't know. If I lived on the East Coast, I might know, but I'm tucked away
I
here.
should know. I should
And
know.
we're just dancing in the streets and blow up dinosaur costumes, while snipers point their guns at us. Thank you. Like anyways, yeah, like I don't know about that if it's a big rivalry game. Why do you ask?
Because that could also be like having a point to prove, wanting
Yeah.
to show up and suit up and show up functionally.
Yeah. No, I do see a point to prove is part of what that is. I'm with you on that. But I think it's more of like we have an identity. We can be a good team. We can win football games. And we just need to become a little bit clearer who we are. And maybe that's Dylan Gabriel. Joe Flacco was always a placeholder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe they can find an identity now. I think they have a lot of hope. And it would definitely make a more compelling narrative if they won this game going through the rest of the season for them.
Yeah.
What do you think then about the moon trine Mercury?
Oh, again, this is where it's like, I don't know. The moon trine Mercury, I think that for me, this is, what would that be? More of an air game in general? Is that
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
you're thinking? But for me, that's a form of support for the Steelers.
Yep. Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
wherever the moon is making a contact, the way that I look at it is whatever the moon's doing is kind of giving some insight into how the game is moving, like how it's flowing.
Yeah.
And both teams are getting support, but this moon will form a trine with Mercury during the game. The moon will not conjoin Jupiter during the game. And so that is where, again, I'm just like, well, point for the Steelers, I guess. But I do think if you were talking about just in terms of scoring, probably a lot of passing, especially for the Steelers, which I think is expected with how Rodgers is currently playing.
Yeah, and that's what he's famous for. He's famous for these moon balls that, really like move the Steelers down the field. Now, if we were to employ Bonatti's method, which we're not really, we're just looking at the inception chart of the game. But if we were to employ Bonatti's method at 240, then the moon and Jupiter move into the seventh house. Saturn, representing the first house of Browns, moves into the third house retrograde. So Bonatti might come out with, and I'm just going to put this out there for everybody, with the idea that in the end, the Steelers really come on strong in the second half and win the game.
Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that for sure.
Yeah, no, I want the Browns to win. I'm all about the Browns. Okay,
Same.
I am the over under is 38.5 right now. I am for the over. And then I am for the Browns covering.
Okay.
Those are the only two things that I'm thinking about. I would probably go for, possibilities. Like I would take the over on Dylan Gabriel if they offer it at 190 yards. I would take the over on that. I don't think that the Steelers defense is as good. I think that he's going to be able to put up more yards. And I would probably take the over on Aaron Rodgers if it was over like 220 or 240. I do think he's likely to get an interception. I think there's likely to be an interception. Those are the only things I'm seeing in there. Do you see anything?
No, that's your point of mastery. I'm just here for the vibes and maybe
Yeah.
the final score,
Yeah.
but I didn't pull anything because literally what I wrote is if I'm reading in my notes, I wrote if I'm reading the chart, the Browns win.
Right.
That's kind of where I'm at. That's like
Yeah.
the depth I went to. So yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Cool. Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's everything. Anything else culturally you wanted to touch in on right now?
And I mean, not especially not anything I could think of. Tri-wheel chart, not much is going on. There's not much going on with the Mars placements either. So this wasn't anything that I saw as especially valuable in terms of pulling out a winner. Is there anything else you want to cover?
Absolutely. I want to just quickly pivot to the Chiefs and what it means for Travis Kelce that there is a song about his beast out there as one of the most popular songs in America right now. Like, what is going on?
For
Like,
real.
does that affect his
The
game
lyrics
time?
are so bad, but okay. I really can't be talking because now Swift is being compared to Shakespeare. So I
Wow.
don't want to receive hate from the fan base.
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, I was like, well, maybe Bob Dylan, and that is enough to get a lot of hate, you know.
Yeah,
But
certainly.
Shakespeare, that is amazing. That is amazing.
No, yeah, no, that is a fascinating dynamic. We do have his AA rated chart. At some point, we should look at Kelsey's chart and see what all is going on in his world. But I can't imagine just moving through life now with that hit song.
Yeah, quite something. Now you wrote a post about this, right?
Oh,
About
absolutely, yes.
yeah, and where can people find that? Because it's
Oh,
absolutely
yes, I
brilliant.
understand. So I am not a Swift fan, no disrespect to the fan base, but I was just curious to see how the album would shake out. I have thoughts about it. I leaned more toward the positive, which is sort of my innate inclination,
Mhm.
but you can find it on spicygeminiastrology.substack.com, all
Right.
free posts, usually oriented toward like pop cultural things.
Right. Yeah. And it does turn out that she sold more downloads of Ophelia than anybody else has in the history of the world. So it has been a raging success. You know, the thing about Taylor Swift, which is so interesting, is that she's so incredibly successful, but at the same time, it's somehow almost hidden. Like you don't, like it's everywhere, but it's almost not noticeable.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And she has a brand that's 20 years deep. I mean, we don't know much about her, and a lot of the critiques or even just the general feedback is she mirrors her audience. She mirrors the partners she's dating in terms of the lyrics she's writing, the
Mhm.
album she's putting out.
Mhm.
It's interesting to really try to get a handle on who she is as an individual. And there's also like the component, at least from my perspective, of she's been famous since she was a middle teenager, 14,
Mhm.
15, 16. So I'm curious what she is like in independent of the entity that is Taylor Swift
Right.
functionally.
Taylor Swift
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, in my opinion, Scorpio rising, but there are
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah.
Capricorn rising proponents. Which one do you go for?
Definitely Scorpio. It's not even a question. Usually when she has an album coming out, Mars is part of the conversation. Mars specifically in the sign of Scorpio. That happened to be the case with
Yep.
this recent drop, if that is her ascendant. And I think her natal Mars is also in the sign of Scorpio. That maps onto not only her sort of output of really competitive, functionally speaking, in like the musical world, competitive albums, but also just the power, the essence, the intensity that she commands as well, which I think is also part of the Taylor Swift TM branding.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then if you end up listening to her songs, which I do, like I try to listen to every album,
Yeah.
she sings a lot about death and sex and
Oh,
rebirth and strife. And like it's in almost every song's lyrics. There's just this kind of like scorpionic theme that ends up coming through. And if she was the Capricorn rising, I think that more of the lyrics would be oriented towards like m making the money,
yeah.
you
I
know?
agree with this.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Another interesting point with the Capricorn rising is her sun would be in the 12th house, and I don't know if that is something I could buy. Whole sign at least. It would be in the 12th house.
Okay, but Obama's sun is in the whole sign 12th house, right? And so
True.
there is like this, like you are a public persona rather than an individual,
Yeah.
if your sun is in the 12th house. Oh,
That's a really good point.
yeah.
Yeah.
I did that as a counter. I'm still Scorpio rising,
Yeah.
100% with you on that. We'll see how that goes. But she seems to be surging right now. Mars is approaching the natal Mars. Mars is approaching the Scorpio rising, theorized chart of 5:17 a.m. But she's obviously very vitally into the game of football and into her well, her boyfriend's into her, whatever. She has a whole song about it. Go listen to it, people. And so, but anyways, that's the episode. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jess. It is always amazing. Jess Campbell can be found, whoops,
No, I'm here.
spicygemini.com.
SpicyGeminiAstrology.com.
That's
And
right.
where can we
And
find you?
Dorje Kirsten at heartastrology.com. Look forward to seeing you next week and hope you enjoy.
And go Browns
Go
also.
Browns. Go Browns. Absolutely. Okay. Whoops.